Welcome back, my friends. Thank you for joining me. I thought we could begin with this comfortable exercise, shuaisho, this swinging hands practice. Very simple. If you haven't done this before with me in other classes, like Snake and Turtle, please make sure that you're not twisting your hips, or especially twisting your knees. Rather, if I was to stand behind you and hang onto your belt loops so you couldn't turn your hips, see if you can turn your navel, not your chest. Don't twist your shoulders. See if you can turn your waist. Let your arms hang. They just fall outward in this natural centrifugal motion outward. Things just easily turn. And again, notice I'm not turning my hips. This is the most common problem. And this might be a wonderful way, like some self-massage that we've practiced, to help open your body and prepare it for some quiet standing meditation. I want to include as many of these little suggestions as possible, because for somebody it will make all of the difference. And you'll find that it's much, much easier to practice, much less painful, or in the very least, much more comfortable. And so let's just spend perhaps 5 minutes with these simple back and forth movements. Keeping your mind relatively settled, softening your breath, letting go, especially of your shoulders, your upper back, your waist. And while we do, I will regale you with a story that I think might be helpful. But first, let's talk about dream signs. Years ago, I, and like a lot of people, got into lucid dreaming as a practice. I was busily exploring lots of spiritual and pseudo-spiritual methods and seeing what worked for me, which is always a very handy thing to do, led me here. And for a while, lucid dreaming was a big part of my path. And at least several nights a week, if not every night, I was able to have some form of lucid dream, which is, for those of you who don't know, you are dreaming at night like normal, and you become conscious during the dream. You can teach yourself to wake up in the dream and have some measure of interaction or control or some kind of experience. And especially for a lot of the yogic people that I was involved with at the time, it was a big part of their practice. And I did see some benefits from it. And just for those of you who are asking, I no longer practice it because when I came here to study with Master Jurchung, highly recommend that everybody study with him if you get the chance, TaoistStudiesInstitute.org. He had taught me why it can be disruptive, it can be harmful to actively lucid dream as a practice, depending on the stage of your practice. And so I no longer practice it and no longer recommend it, but as a metaphor, it can be very helpful because you are waking up in the moment, which is, of course, what we are continually doing during meditation practice. And there are lots of methods that people practice to wake up during their dreams, their lucid dreaming, and certain ones worked for me better than others. Of course, you practice setting your intention beforehand. The way we do with meditation, we say to ourselves, I'm just going to sit here and be comfortable. And I'm not going to be lost in my delusions and my distractions, my daydreams. Instead, I'm just going to rest here. That's our intent as we come to practice in this class. And for lucid dreaming, you set a similar intent. Before you fall asleep at night, you tell yourself, if I am dreaming, I will notice that I'm dreaming and wake up. And again, I don't recommend that people try it. One of the methods that was very helpful for me was to keep a dream journal. For me, I did it for several years. And after a while, you notice that there are specific patterns in your dreams, recurring patterns, themes. For instance, the person who was writing the book, if I remember correctly, had a consistent theme in his dream that his contact lens would fall out. And it would hit the ground, and while he was looking around for it, it would multiply. And that happened in a lot of his dreams. Whatever his psychotherapist would make of that, I don't know. But for me, I had similar things. For instance, as a kid, I dreamt a lot of being underwater and breathing underwater, or flying and moving around across the ground, and lots of different specific themes to my dreams that would recur all the time before everyone starts to psychoanalyze me. And I noticed that these things, of course, never occurred in my real life. And so if I told myself while I was setting the intention and I was falling asleep, that if I notice this thing happening, hey, it's not real, wake up. And after a while of telling myself that, my unconscious, my subconscious, this aspect of my mind took note. And I would find myself underwater or something, as as a kid, and I would go, "Oh, I'm dreaming. It has to be a dream." And so I would wake up in the dream. And that became a very reliable way for me to consistently wake myself up in this lucid dreaming state. So why am I talking about this? It's because we have a habit as we practice of dreaming. We wander away. And there are consistent signposts for us. For some people, they consistently daydream about maybe a relationship that they had when they were younger, or I don't know, some object that they want to have in the future, or something like that, accolades. And we know that those things are not happening in real life. And so we can say to ourselves, hey, if I notice that I am having this argument with this person that's been dead for 15 years or something, then I know that I'm daydreaming. And by setting that clear intention, we start to wake up. So you'll actually notice that the distraction itself wakes you up. And that can be, of course, very helpful because you'll be meditating, quietly resting there like a stone Buddha sitting, and suddenly you are having a discussion with somebody in some island place that you visited when you were younger, and you go, oh, this is the thing that always takes me away. And just noticing that will bring you back to the present moment. And then you have the chance to work with that particular distraction, that particular dream sign, that trigger for your daydreams, and slowly loosen the bindings around it that always catch you. Weaken the Velcro that makes you stick to it each time. But first you have to be able to notice that you have that tendency so you can release that trigger. And we all have specific triggers, certain Velcro thoughts that catch us more than others. And so we might as well notice them and deal with them individually. Now, as we settle into basic standing posture, I hope those swings loosened you up and helped you a bit. As with all of our practices, I do not want you to obsess anymore about these things because that becomes its own problem. This whole series is designed just to help take you on a tour through possibilities of your mind, tendencies that we have, styles of blockage and obstruction, things that can hinder our progress, things that get in the way, and how to let go of those things as we go. And so you wouldn't want to obsessively run through this over and over again and make it its own separate practice. We just want to notice it so we are more aware of what's going on and then let it go. That's why it's this 100-day series, not a permanent practice. We're just trying things out, seeing how they feel, expanding our level of awareness so that when we sit, we're already old hands with knowing what our minds are like. And then it's easier to rest in the present moment because nothing surprises us. No patterns sneak up from behind us, or at least less often. And so here, as you settle and stand, Feel your body open. Do our regular sequence, softening down through your body to the ground, letting go, letting the weight fall through. Noticing how much softer and more open you feel after the swinging practice. And we'll talk about it more at the halfway point. But for now, notice when your mind wanders away, as usual, just lightly, casually, take note of something that's triggering the distraction. And maybe while I was talking, you already knew 3 things that you tend to obsess about, or that constantly take you away from the present moment. So just pay attention, noticing. Get better at noticing. Just 10 more minutes of quiet standing. When your mind wanders away, just for today, taking note of what caused it or the direction that it went. Notice if it's a pattern, and then gently let go. Lose interest. Don't push it away. Don't harden yourself or clench. Only noticing is enough. Closing when you're done. Feels good. There was a question recently about doing the standing posture in shoes. And two things about it. It is fine to do it without shoes, as long as you are on something comfortable, soft. I don't recommend standing barefoot on cement, for instance. Just, there isn't much give. Your body hardens itself to protect itself from the hardness of the ground, and other reasons as well. It's just kind of exhausting. Also, you want to stand in a way that your feet stay warm. There is a big nature outdoor teaching school near where I live, and a number of the people in my community are part of that. And there is a consistent tendency to want to be outside, barefoot on the ground, as a way to connect with nature, and that's wonderful. Except that very often they're in positions and places where it's very cold. And they stop feeling the cold in their body after a while because our bodies learn to deal with things. But that's not great because the cold then creeps into their bodies. And if you've been learning with me for a while now, you've learned about channels and chi flow, and it's very important to keep your feet warm. I end up treating several of these people for aches and pains in their feet and their knees and their lower back, lots of chi weakness symptoms, and lots of illness. But it's such a big part of the culture, it's really difficult to get them to keep their feet warm. And so please let me encourage you to keep your feet warm. Fine to have barefoot practices as long as the environment that you're in is conducive to keeping yourself warm and comfortable. That's one. And if you do decide to wear shoes, please wear shoes that allow your feet to spread out and open. If you wear shoes that contain your feet too much, your body won't be able to relax through because your feet can't soften appropriately. Your ankles won't be able to adjust the way we will want them to as your back changes shape. And your feet will spread open as you place the weight through them in a different way. So for instance, you can see with my feet, you want the end of your foot to be the widest part of your foot. Your foot spreads open over time, and it changes the nature and the shape of what's going on inside the foot. And so please do wear shoes that not only keep your feet warm, that keep them protected. Try not to wear something with a big heel, for instance, unless your body requires orthotics. Everybody's different. But please try to stand as naturally and as comfortably as you can, and have shoes that allow your feet to spread out and take the shape that they are naturally made to take. We're going to restore some of the naturalness in the body, and that includes the shape of the feet. So please do choose those shoes carefully if you choose to practice with them. I personally subscribe to a charity, the Awesome Socks Club. And so I get these deliveries of really ridiculous, bright, colorful socks. And so I tend to wear them for my videos for fun. But they're not particularly warm, but they are loose and easy to move around in. So if you want to support a good cause, you can go over there. But you do want to have something that keeps you warm and loose, breathable, healthy skin. All of those qualities are important. Getting comfortable in a seated position, either in a chair. Remember the proper height for the chair, so that the center of your hip is a little above your knees. This helps to soften your hips. Even if you're sitting on the ground, you want that level of change, of shift in height. Resting your weight appropriately, settling through. Let's spend a few minutes doing the Songjing breath, exhaling, letting go, releasing tension through your body, settling into Song, this soft, supple quality. And then as you inhale through your nose, you will allow that sense of stillness, that calm to wash through you and deepen. And while we do this practice, I'll tell you one more teaching story that I think might be helpful, trying to answer questions in this format as best I can. Many years ago in clinic, I had a man arrive, and he came to me because I helped one of his closest friends with some strong emotional issues. And he came to me asking for treatments to help make him more brave. He didn't feel like he was brave enough. And so, as usual, I spent some hours talking with him and helping him. And what we discovered, and this is, of course, over weeks, is that I asked, why do you need to be brave? Well, he needed to quit his job, but he didn't feel brave enough to do it. I asked him about his job. He loved his job. It was his dream job. He was teaching. He'd worked his whole life to have this job. Everything was perfect, but that he found himself super stressed, anxious, and exhausted all the time. So he would have to quit because he couldn't keep going. And I said, okay. And so we talked about that. And again, this is over many sessions chatting with him. And, well, why are you stressed and exhausted? Well, I'm late all the time. I never sleep well. He has to pump himself up on huge amounts of caffeine in the morning just to feel alive enough to get to work, even though he's always a little bit late because he doesn't sleep well. And so he's always very jittery from the caffeine that he takes in the morning, huge amounts. It makes him feel anxious when he's interacting with people that he genuinely likes. And his mind is fuzzy because he is exhausted all the time. So he has to quit. And so we go back and and I eventually find out, oh, okay, well, why are you tired? Well, it's because I don't sleep well. Oh, okay, well, we talked about sleep options, insomnia, and he's not really an insomniac. He sleeps well, but he wakes up all night long with asthma, a kind of wheezing, a tightness in his chest. He can't breathe. And that keeps him up, so he can't sleep well, so he doesn't rest. So it's destroying his work life. I said, okay, well, maybe instead of quitting, we can help you sleep better. And to do that, we'd have to treat his asthma. So I'm helping with his asthma. It gets a little better, but it's still coming up. Eventually, I discover, oh, his asthma is being triggered not because he's an asthmatic, but because at night he has acid reflux. So he's laying down and sleeping. A little bit of acid comes up and he breathes it in and it gets into his lungs and starts to cause inflammation and coughing and wakes him up. So I said, okay, so you're stressed at work because you're exhausted. You're exhausted because you can't sleep. You can't sleep because you have asthma. You have asthma because you have acid reflux. Okay, so let's treat acid reflux instead of quitting your job. And so we start to figure out what's causing his acid reflux. I mean, he comes from a culture where this family late night dinner is very important. Everybody gets together and they drink lots of coffee and they eat a lot of cheese and dairy. It's just part of this culture. You can probably figure out which culture I'm talking about. And fortunately, he's the cook for this. And so it's a really big experience for him. He also loves doing it. And he he discovers that he's actually a bit lactose intolerant. He can't handle dairy. And he's consuming this huge amount of caffeine right before bed. And so we come all the way back, and eventually I teach him how to substitute for dairy, how to take enzymes, how to digest the dairy differently or avoid it, and how to use decaf coffee before bed. And he makes those changes at this end, and all the way through, his life gets better. His relationships improve. He sleeps better. He has more energy. The stress and anxiety he's been having with workers and with his job teaching, which is, again, his dream job, completely vanish because he feels better. And he's not hyperdosing on caffeine in the morning, so he doesn't feel jittery and weird when he's around people. So his relationships improve. He develops a more serious relationship, and that goes off later and becomes a permanent one. And he disappears from my clinic, which happens. People stop coming for a little while. And I run into him, and I find out what's been going on. And his entire life changed. And he wanted to thank me. He found me to thank me for saving his job and changing his life, because he was going to quit. He came in, if you remember, to have the courage to quit. But what he really needed was someone to figure out what was causing this giant chain reaction in his life, where it started. Way back here. And it took me a while to find it, of course. And then we adjusted that relatively small thing. He didn't even have to stop doing this thing that he loved so much. And everything else in his life fell like dominoes to become better and better and better. And his job improved, and he got a raise. So now I claim that my treatment gave him a raise. Put that in my pamphlet. So what's the point that I'm saying all of this? It's very important to learn not to deal with what you think you're dealing with, but the cause. What's the cause and the condition that's creating this cascade of changes in your life? And later on, as you become more settled and more clear and concentrated, much later in other practices, not this 100-day series, you actually develop the skill to go back and look to see where your thoughts are diverging, where things are changing. That takes some skill, of course, so we don't do it here. But we do want to start to pay attention to those triggers, those things that cascade down and turn into actual problems in our lives. And right here, where we sit and soften into the present moment, you will find, I guarantee you, that there are certain triggers here, certain directions your mind will wander, certain emotional patterns that get drawn up into you because you can't just sit still comfortably, that turn into giant storms and messes in your life later. And by undoing this small seed here, by not following those patterns in your mind, your entire life will change. You may not get a raise, but if you do, Patreon. But look for those seeds, those beginning patterns as you sit. Undo them, undo those little lines of tension. Maybe you have trouble sitting in meditation because your back hurts. And you find that your back hurts because your posture is bad. Why is your posture bad? Because you're sitting in a weird cushion in a bad position or something. So you change your chair, and suddenly your meditations are way better. Your mind becomes calmer, and the medicine works better. You look for the root cause. Don't fight with everything downstream. Instead, go upstream and look to see what the cause is. And very often, this is where we find those causes, right here. You can only find them in the present moment. You have to be here to notice what's going on. And we have to be here not trying to do things, because that's not listening, that's adding. We undo all of that. We just pay attention without an agenda, without trying to force things to be a certain way. And that is a skill that we have to develop, and it is worth developing. Right here. So once you finish your Sung Jing breath, let go, just like normal in all of our other classes, settling into the present moment, just being here. and have that very light intention, like I was setting with my lucid dreaming, that light intention beforehand, to notice when something begins to cascade down, a trigger that creates problems for me later, or that creates positive changes, because we want to notice those too. And we're just here, listening, and that's all. So easy. Just another 10 minutes or so of sitting, falling back to the present moment, just noticing what's happening. Don't add. Watch. Listen. So your homework, should you choose to accept it, is first to notice whether or not those swings that we did helped your practice. If they helped settle your awareness a bit, if the standing felt easier or the sitting was more comfortable, just notice. And if it did, of course, please begin to include it before we follow through with these practices, because you might as well make it easier on yourself. And the other homework assignment is to pay attention, just as we've been doing, to the most common distractions. Are you somebody who's distracted by thoughts of the future, like we've practiced, thoughts of the past? And all of these little things that we've mentioned before, we've practiced noticing if we feel doubt or if we feel anger. And if you move in those directions that you've noticed, see if you can notice the trigger for those things. Maybe it's an interaction that you have regularly. Maybe it's something that you see, a poster on your wall. Start to notice those so you can begin to adjust those seeds that you're finding in your day. And that will make a tremendous difference in your life and health throughout the rest of your day. Just pay attention and enjoy your practice. I'll see you tomorrow.